CEO gave a little girl a choice. Her response left him in tears. The city was wrapped in a biting winter chill, the kind that cut through layers of clothing and settled deep in the bones. Frost clung to the edges of buildings, and the sidewalks shimmered with patches of thin ice. Office windows glowed faintly as workers rushed home to warmth and comfort. But for one man, warmth had long ago become unfamiliar. Mr. Raymond Cole, a sharply dressed CEO in his mid-50s, stood at the entrance of his skyscraper, hands in his coat pockets, his eyes distant. He had built an empire, Cole Tech Enterprises, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, but success had carved hollowness in his soul. That evening, instead of heading straight to his car, he lingered outside, drawn by something he couldn't name. The city buzzed quietly around him, its rhythm steady, uncaring. His footsteps echoed as he walked down the pavement, past the usual streetlights and muted honks of late traffic. And then he saw her, a little girl sitting alone on the sidewalk, framed by the dull glow of a street lamp. She couldn't have been more than 7, bundled in a worn-out pink sweater that hung off her shoulders like a borrowed coat. Her hair was messy, her cheeks red from the cold, and her fingers visibly trembling, though she never complained. Beside her sat a shallow basket filled with old, broken toys. A stuffed rabbit with no ears, a headless doll, a yo-yo scratched with age. Yet she arranged them carefully, delicately, like prized possessions. She wasn't begging, she wasn't crying. Instead, she greeted each passerby with a soft smile, full of hope and quiet resilience. Raymond stopped a few feet away, curious. She looked up at him with eyes far older than her years, eyes that had seen struggle, loss, and long nights of waiting. "Good evening, sir," she said with a voice gentle as falling snow. Her words were polite, pure. She picked up a toy, held it out, and added, "Would you like to buy something for someone you love?" Raymond was stunned. No child had ever asked him that, not like this. The way she spoke, it wasn't desperation, it was purpose. She wasn't selling toys to play, she was selling to survive. He looked at her hands, small and raw from the cold, gripping a toy soldier with chipped paint. People walked past her like she didn't exist, but she didn't let that dim her spirit. She stayed seated, calm, hopeful. Raymond's heart squeezed in his chest. He thought of his penthouse apartment, full of things but void of laughter. He thought of the dinners eaten alone, the holidays skipped, the phone that never rang anymore. And then he thought of this child, this Sophie, though he didn't yet know her name, sitting bravely in the cold, holding on to dignity like it was her only blanket. His mouth opened, but no words came out. How could someone so small, with so little, carry herself with such quiet strength? For a moment, time stilled. The cold didn't matter. The city noise faded. It was just him and her, a powerful man, and a little girl who had unknowingly reached the part of him he thought had died. She smiled again, eyes shining. "It's okay if you don't want to buy, sir. I just hope someone does, so I can buy soup for Mama tonight." Her voice cracked slightly, but her face didn't falter. Raymond swallowed hard, blinking away the sting in his eyes. He had attended $1,000 galas, shaken hands with presidents, stood on magazine covers, yet no moment had ever felt this real, this human. He looked down at the basket of broken toys and realized they weren't the broken ones. He was. Raymond stood there in silence for a few more seconds, the chill of the wind forgotten as he looked into the little girl's steady eyes. Then, slowly, he took a step forward and another, until he was standing directly in front of her. Without saying a word, he lowered himself to the ground, his knees creaking against the pavement. He didn't care that his expensive coat might catch dust or that someone might see him kneeling before a street child. In that moment, all that mattered was her. His voice softened, unsure of itself, as he finally spoke. "Why are you out here alone, sweetheart?" The girl hesitated, blinking slowly, as if trying to judge if she could trust this man. Her voice, when it came, was calm but faint, like a whisper caught in the wind. "Mama's sick," she said, her hands gently adjusting the toys in the basket. "She coughs a lot. Sometimes she can't breathe at night. I need to buy her medicine." She didn't sound angry. She didn't sound desperate. She just spoke as if it were a fact of life, something she'd grown used to carrying. Raymond felt a lump grow in his throat. He didn't interrupt. She went on. "These toys are old. Some of them used to be mine. Some were left in the building where we live. I clean them and try to sell them. Maybe someone still wants them." There was no trace of pity in her tone, only quiet resolve. She believed in what she was doing. That stunned him. A child, who should have been in school or playing or being loved, was here in the freezing cold, hoping someone would find value in forgotten toys. Raymond reached into his coat pocket and slowly pulled out a small box wrapped in shiny paper. It was a gift he had bought for his niece. A beautiful, brand-new doll with glass eyes and silky hair. He had planned to deliver it that weekend, but something told him it belonged here more. He held it out gently and placed it near Sophie, his basket. "Would you like this?" he asked. Her eyes lit up for a moment. A flicker, a brief glint of childhood excitement. She reached out but then paused, looking up at him with curiosity. "Why are you giving it to me?" she asked. Not suspiciously, just honestly. Raymond smiled faintly and said, "Because sometimes good people deserve something beautiful." She looked at the doll again, but this time her fingers didn't move. She glanced back at her basket, at the ragged toys and the few coins she had made today. Then Raymond added something else, something unexpected, even to himself. "Or," he said, reaching into his other pocket and pulling out a business card, "you could come work for me." Sophie furrowed her brows, confused. "What do you mean?" He explained carefully, trying not to overwhelm her. "At my office. We need someone to help with small cleaning work, sweeping floors, wiping tables. It's not hard, and you'll be safe, warm, and paid fairly. It's not a toy, but it's a job. Something real." He wasn't sure why he made the offer. Maybe to test her heart. Maybe to see if her strength ran as deep as he thought. Maybe because something inside him was breaking open. "So," he said softly, "which one do you want, little one? A toy or a job?" He fully expected her to choose the doll. She was a child, after all. A child deserves a little joy. But something in the way she looked back at him made him wonder. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were steady. She didn't reach for either gift right away. Instead, she tilted her head, studying him like someone much older. He waited, heart quietly thudding, not knowing that this moment, this one simple choice, would be the start of something far bigger than either of them could imagine. Sophie glanced at the beautifully wrapped box again, her small eyes reflecting the soft golden glow of the nearby street lamp. For a fleeting moment, a childlike wonder lit her face. The kind that belonged in warm homes and birthday mornings, not cold sidewalks. Her fingers twitched, hovering just above the ribbon, as if wanting so badly to feel what joy felt like. But then, slowly, she drew her hand back. Her smile faded into something quiet and solemn. She looked up at Raymond, her voice calm and sure, like she had already made peace with the weight of her own decision. "Sir," she said gently, "I'd like the job. Please." Her words didn't tremble. They stood firm, like a child carrying more than she ever should. "I can clean really well. I help Mama at home all the time. I'm small, but I can work hard." She looked down at her feet, then back up. "I just want to take care of Mama. Toys are nice, but food lasts longer." Raymond froze. The cold outside couldn't compare to the stillness that gripped his chest in that moment. It wasn't shock. It was something deeper, something ancient. It was like the child's answer unlocked a door in him that had been sealed shut for years. His lips parted, but no words came. What could he possibly say to a little girl who had just chosen survival over joy? Who had chosen duty over play? He felt the air shift between them. His hands, which had once sealed million-dollar contracts without hesitation, now trembled slightly as he lowered the doll back into the box. His throat tightened, and he slowly knelt beside her again, this time not as a wealthy man or a powerful CEO, but as a human being humbled by the raw purity of a child's heart. His voice came out low, barely above a whisper. "You remind me of someone I lost a long time ago." He wasn't sure why those words escaped him, or why now, after all these years, his past suddenly felt so close. Sophie tilted her head. She didn't ask who. She didn't pry. She just waited, as if she understood that silence sometimes carried more meaning than questions. Raymond stared at her for a long moment, the sharp edges of his polished world softening under the weight of her presence. She had no idea what she had just done, how her choice had stirred something in him he thought was long buried. In boardrooms, Raymond was known for his control, his ability to stay composed no matter the pressure. But here, beside a little girl sitting on cracked pavement, he felt his composure slipping. His eyes blurred. The streetlights turned hazy. He reached into his coat pocket and offered her a pair of gloves. Warm, wool-lined, expensive. She took them with a shy thank you, sliding them onto her small, cold hands. They were too big, but she smiled anyway. For Raymond, it wasn't just a moment of kindness. It was the first crack in the wall he had built around his heart. The ache he felt wasn't just sadness. It was recognition. In Sophie's voice, in her eyes, in her quiet sacrifice, he saw something familiar. A reflection of the daughter he once had. A child with dreams and laughter, lost to time and tragedy. He hadn't spoken of her in years, not even to himself, but now, kneeling in the cold beside Sophie, the memories began to surface like thawing ice. And though the night remained cold, a strange warmth bloomed in his chest, painful and healing all at once. This little girl had just made a choice, not knowing it would change not only her life, but his. The next morning, Raymond arrived at his office earlier than usual, his mind still echoing with Sophie's voice from the night before. Something had shifted in him, not just emotionally, but fundamentally. For the first time in years, his actions that day weren't driven by quarterly goals or boardroom expectations. He called his executive assistant in and gave her an unusual task: locate Sophie and her mother, and make sure they never had to suffer again. Within hours, his staff had found the old apartment building where Sophie lived, a narrow structure with peeling walls and drafty windows that rattled in the wind. Raymond didn't just send help, he showed up himself. When Sophie opened the door and saw him standing there with a quiet smile and 2 bags of groceries in hand, her eyes went wide. Her mother, pale and weak, tried to stand to greet him, but Raymond gently urged her to rest. He brought with him a team of doctors, nurses, and a housing agent. In a single day, Sophie and her mother were moved into a warm 2-bedroom apartment just 10 minutes from Coltech Tower, furnished, safe, and filled with light. Medical care was arranged immediately. Her mother, once battling every breath, began to recover. Sophie's eyes, always wise, now sparkled with something new, hope without exhaustion. Raymond also enrolled her in a nearby private school known for its nurturing environment and scholarship program. She received a new backpack, crisp uniforms, and notebooks with her name written carefully on the front cover. But despite all these blessings, Sophie asked for just one thing to stay the same: her job. "Please, Mr. Raymond," she said quietly, "I still want to work after school. I don't want everything to be given to me. I want to earn some of it." He didn't argue. Instead, he nodded, deeply moved, and made sure the office janitorial schedule included her name. Not as an employee, but as a symbol of something far greater. Every afternoon, around 4:15, Sophie would arrive at the office carrying her books in one hand and a small mop in the other. She wore her school uniform proudly, sleeves rolled up, her face bright with purpose. She would sweep the corners, wipe the windows, and greet every employee she passed with a cheerful, "Good afternoon." At first, the staff was confused. This little girl cleaning their office. But within days, she had captured every heart in the building. The front desk clerk began saving her candies. The HR manager brought her fresh notebooks. The IT guy fixed her school tablet for free. She had become the soul of the company, not because she worked there, but because she reminded them all what grace looked like. Even Raymond's office felt different. Her laugh in the hallway, the soft shuffle of her shoes on the marble floor, the way she gently asked the cleaning lady if she could help, it all brought color into a place once ruled by monotone emails and stiff meetings. Raymond found himself staying later just to hear Sophie's footsteps echo near his door. One day, when a client walked into the building and asked who the cheerful young girl was, the receptionist didn't hesitate to say, "She's part of us, that's Sophie." And truly, she was no longer just a little girl trying to survive. She had become something far more lasting, a thread in the very fabric of a company built on logic and profit, now softened by love and purpose. In the cafeteria, people saved her a seat. In the elevator, they held the door open longer when they saw her coming. She never asked for special treatment. She never expected anything more than what she earned. But everyone gave it anyway. Raymond watched it all unfold with quiet pride. This girl, who once sat on a cold sidewalk selling forgotten toys, was now touching lives, with nothing more than her honesty and humility. And as the days passed, the office no longer felt like a tower of steel and glass. It felt human. Raymond found himself drawn to the apartment more often than he expected, not out of obligation, but from something softer, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. The walls that had quietly enclosed his heart for over a decade began to crack with every conversation, every shared cup of tea, every smile Sophie gave so freely. He watched her grow, not just in height, but in confidence, her voice stronger, her eyes brighter, her presence grounding. Her mother's health improved steadily, yet she still wore tired eyes, softened only when she looked at her daughter. Raymond, once a ghost in his own life, now spent evenings helping Sophie with homework or listening to her talk about her classmates and teachers. She would wave her arms excitedly, describe every detail of her day, and he would sit silently, heart swelling, wondering when his world had become so alive again. At night, when he returned to his large, quiet home, it felt less like peace and more like absence. The silence now echoed differently. It didn't comfort him. It reminded him. Memories long buried began to drift into his mind without resistance. The soft patter of little feet on marble floors, laughter from a room down the hall, a tiny voice calling out, "Daddy, watch this!" before everything faded into a storm of sirens and unanswered prayers. His daughter had been young, full of light and wonder, just like Sophie. Her loss had sent him into a kind of emotional exile, one where success became a shield and money a distraction. He hadn't spoken of her in years, not to friends, not to colleagues, not even to himself. But now, every glance at Sophie stirred that hidden part of him back to life. She didn't replace what he had lost, but she reminded him that love wasn't gone. It had only been waiting for a reason to return. One evening, just as the sky turned orange with the last traces of Sue's, Raymond knocked gently on Sophie's door. Her mother opened it, dressed in a simple cardigan, her face pale but peaceful. He stepped inside, holding a small envelope in his hand, visibly nervous. Sophie was in her room, humming quietly as she colored something for school. Raymond and her mother sat at the kitchen table, the light above them casting a warm, golden hue across the room. He took a deep breath and placed the envelope on the table. Inside was a legal guardianship request. Unsigned, no pressure. Just a question unspoken. "I know she's your daughter," he said softly, voice almost trembling. "I know I could never take that place, but if anything ever happened, I want her to be safe. I want to be there, not just as a helper, as someone permanent." The words hung in the air like mist. Sophie's mother stared at the envelope, then at him. Her lip quivered slightly, eyes slowly welling up. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her fingers reached across the table and touched his hand. "You already are," she whispered, and her voice cracked with emotion. Tears slid down her cheeks, not from fear or sorrow, but from a kind of deep, aching relief. She had watched him quietly over the weeks, seen the way he looked at Sophie, not with charity, but with love. Not out of guilt, but out of connection. He didn't just save them, he had let them save him too. Raymond sat in silence, his head bowed, eyes brimming with unshed tears. That single whisper, "You already are," struck deeper than any boardroom applause ever had. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them. A silent agreement, a shared understanding that family isn't always defined by blood, but by presence, care, and healing. And while the past could never be undone, it could be softened, repurposed, transformed. Sophie peeked out from the hallway, holding a drawing of the three of them together. "Look what I made," she said proudly. Neither of them spoke. They just smiled. And this time, it reached every part of their soul. The years moved gently forward, like pages turning in a book no one wanted to end. Seasons changed, the city grew taller, but the bond between Sophie and Raymond remained steady, evolving, deepening, maturing into something neither of them could have predicted. From a little girl sweeping office floors to a young woman filling rooms with her voice and presence, Sophie had become a beacon of resilience and hope. She studied hard, never once asking for shortcuts or favors. Her ambition was rooted not in greed but in gratitude, and every step she climbed with humility. Raymond watched her grow with awe, attending her school plays, helping with late-night assignments, and sometimes simply sitting across the dinner table, smiling at the miracle of her existence. When college applications rolled in, Sophie was accepted into one of the country's top universities. Raymond didn't hesitate. He covered every expense, not out of obligation, but out of joy. Watching her carry herself through those college years, confident, focused, compassionate, was more rewarding than any boardroom victory he'd ever tasted. And then, one warm afternoon under a sky full of possibility, the moment arrived. The auditorium was packed with students, faculty, and proud families. The stage was adorned with flowers, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Sophie, now dressed in a flowing graduation gown, stood behind a polished podium, her tassels swaying gently as she looked out over the sea of faces. Raymond sat in the front row, hands folded in his lap, heart thudding like he was about to give a speech himself. Sophie smiled, her voice calm but strong, her eyes bright and steady. "When I was just a girl," she began, her words echoing softly through the hall, "a man gave me a choice, a toy or a job." A few people in the audience chuckled quietly, not expecting the gravity of what came next. "I chose the job," she continued. "But what I got was so much more. I got a family. I got an education. And most importantly, I got a future I never thought belonged to someone like me." A hush fell over the room. Even those who didn't know her story leaned in, touched by the honesty in her voice. That one moment, that one choice, changed everything. Not just for me, but for him too. Because sometimes, when we choose with our hearts instead of our fears, we end up healing others without even knowing it. Her voice softened. "The man who gave me that choice is sitting right here today, and I want to say, thank you. Not just for believing in me, but for letting me believe in myself." A tear traced its way down Raymond's cheek, and he made no effort to hide it. These weren't tears of sorrow or regret. They were full of something rarer: pride, love, and the quiet joy of knowing that a single moment of compassion had bloomed into a lifetime of meaning. As the audience rose in applause, Raymond stood too, his hands coming together in slow, deliberate claps, his eyes never leaving Sophie's. She bowed her head slightly toward him, and he nodded. a silent exchange filled with memories no one else could ever understand. Later that day, under the shade of a blooming tree on campus, they sat on a bench together. Sophie removed her graduation cap and placed it on his lap. "This is yours too," she said simply. Raymond chuckled softly. "No," he replied, placing it gently back on her head. This was always yours. I was just lucky enough to witness it." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and for a moment, there were no more words. Just the quiet wind, the distant cheers of other graduates, and the unshakable bond between two souls who had saved each other. Her choice hadn't just changed her life. It had brought him back to life. It had shown him that love can return in the most unexpected ways. Not with noise, but with stillness. Not with grand gestures, but with small, life-altering moments. And as the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and lavender, the story that began on a cold winter sidewalk came full circle. Not with an ending, but with a new beginning that neither of them would ever forget.